Welcome to Tracking the Cats. This is the fourth episode. I'm Bob Sabin, accompanied with Steve White. And as always, we are sponsored by Stanberry Insurance on Main Street in Silva. Today, we are excited to announce that we've got Coach Kerwin Bell, head coach of the Catamount football team. We like to do things a little bit differently and focus on personalities. And I'm going to go ahead and let Steve ask the first question.
Well, I go back with Coach Bell. Now, he wouldn't remember this, but this was back in 1984 when, before he became the starting quarterback at the University of Florida, and they were in the process of hiring someone to help Norm Carlson with the football operation. I was sports information director here at Western at the time, came down and interviewed. And they gave the job to a guy from the University of Michigan, John. And I came back to Western Carolina and, of course, worked another 15 years before I retired, around the turn of the century. But Coach Bell, everybody knows he was the Southern Conference player, Southeastern Conference Player of the Year in 1984. 14 years in professional football, and of course has been very successful coach now for pushing into 2 decades. So, Coach, I know I've got a Florida background. I grew up down in Central Florida, down in Marion County, and of course know a lot about your career and everything. And came from a very small town like me. You were up in Mayo, and I was down the Summerfield, Weirsdale area. So we have some connections there. Coach, I would, looking back at, ask you maybe a first question here, maybe a comparison. Going back to when you were at Jacksonville and Valdosta State the first 3 years, here 3 years now at Western Carolina, how do you maybe compare your program now to where you were at those schools at Jacksonville and Valdosta State? Maybe the status of your program. Are you further along, about the same, what have you?
That's a real good question, Steve. But I think if you compare Jacksonville, we were 3-8 the first year. Had taken over a pretty tough program there. Had never had a winning season. They had 10 years of football. Really, they were a young program, new program, and so we went 3-8. The next year, we started out 1-3. I remember coming back on a road trip, and lost our third game, and I'm like, goodness, we don't be able to turn this around. And then we wound up clicking off 8 straight wins and finished up 9-3, or 9-4. Actually lost the last game of the season, but won 8 in a row. And I won the conference, the Pioneer Football League conference. So that sort of turned that program around. Was that year two at Valdosta State? It was year three. Year two for us was a 6-5 season, 6-4. And then we turned to come back the next year after playing a lot of freshmen and young kids and see them start to develop. And then we went 14-0 in that third year and won the national championship. So I feel like that's more of where we're heading. The Valdosta State years sort of remind me where we're at right now, in that we had all these young kids that we've developed and they're starting to grow up. We found a quarterback that can, I think, win us a championship. And so now I think we're at that stage where we were in 2018 with Valdosta State. And I think we can make a run. I really think we've got a lot of talented players on this football team. We got to stay healthy. But I really like where we're at heading into year four, as far as our program's concerned.
That's great to hear. I'm more excited than ever this year, particularly hearing about the scrimmages and stuff that we've gotten started. Tell me a little bit about how did you decide to end up at Western when you first got the call? What was it like evaluating the opportunity to come to Western Carolina and Cullowhee?
Well, first of all, I had a chance to. I think the search committee had put me up pretty high in the search, from what I understand, that they had sort of used, and so Alex called me, and we had a chance to speak on the phone. And I had known actually the chancellor back when she had taken over at Valdosta State for a little while as an intern, back when I was at Valdosta State my first year. So I knew Chancellor Brown, and then having a chance to meet Alex, we really hit it off. And I interviewed, and he invited me up. And then once he invited me up here, and I seen sort of the layout of the land and seen the facilities, and just the atmosphere that's here. I felt like this is perfect place for me. We love small towns. Me and my wife, we grew up in a Mayo, Florida, which is a one red light town. And so we really fell in love with the place and fell in love with the people too. Felt like, we had, I think as a head football coach, that athletic director and that chancellor or president we all have to be aligned. And I felt like we were going to be that. It wasn't like you was coming somewhere where they had been here 15 or 20 years and now they're saying they're going to turn things around. They had just got here also. And you could tell this was a place that was really going to take off and it was going to give you a chance to be successful. And I've always been the kind of guy I love, going out and being challenged and taking on these challenges like this. And I felt like we had it set up here with the chancellor and the AD to get it done.
That's great. Well, you're actually making a step up. Cullowhee is a 2 red light town. So,
Yeah,
Steve.
right.
That's a lot more than we used to have. We only had a caution light up at Joyner Square when I came here a long time ago. We're making progress. Coach, maybe talking about comparisons and everything. The team that you'll put on the field next Thursday night, a week from Thursday night at NC State, maybe comparing this team at this point to last season's 7-4 team, a nationally ranked squad. Of course, I know everybody's thinking about that and, hey, are we ready to take the next step up? Maybe compare the teams last year at this time to this year's team at this time.
Well, like I told our team, and what we've sort of been talking about since January was it's our time. And what we mean by that to our team is that, last year going into the season and the prior season, we knew we weren't quite as good. I didn't think we were as a football team because we didn't have the veteran leadership. We hadn't been through some tough moments. We hadn't grown as a football team. We hadn't experienced some of the highs and lows I think you have to experience to develop as a championship football team. I thought there was other teams that probably a little bit better off than we were going into net last year, which was Furman, with 40-something seniors. Mercer had been together as a football program for 2 or 3 years, building their program, which was ahead of us. And then Chattanooga, and wound up going 1-2 against those teams. But we knew going into the season, we had to find a way to catch those guys. I thought they were just built a little bit better than we were at that stage, a little bit more veteran leadership. And we knew we had to catch up somehow. And I thought we was close to getting there. This year, going into the offseason, like I told this football team, there's no excuses. We are now a veteran team. We've had some tough losses. We've had some great wins. We've now got an established veteran quarterback, a quarterback who's won the Player of the Year in this conference. And I think our offensive line was great last year. I talked about them being a top 10 FCS offensive line, which I thought they were. But we had 8 out of our 11 get hurt. After that last game, we had 8 of 11 starters, or 8 of the top 11 players on the offensive line was hurt during the season. So that really damaged us a lot, having that many up front. But, we come back this year, and you could say compared to 2 teams, I think we're just as good on the offensive line now as we were last year, maybe even deeper because of the guys who had to play last year. We've got a lot of guys with some experience. I think our defensive line now has caught up. I think they're up there and now can go be a positive for us up front on the defensive side of the ball. And then you add that quarterback who's now a veteran, who's got 2 years left, who is Player of the Year. So now you got that guy who we know is the leader of this football team. I think those 3 things, O-line, D-line, the way we've come together as those 2 that are positives now for our program, and then you add the quarterback that's coming back off of Player of the Year, I think that tells us we're a lot better program. I think adding our coaching staff, we lost some people, but I thought for the most part, when you add Jerry Odom as our defensive coordinator, we are a much more balanced program than we've been any other time that we've been here. What I mean by that, I think, we've always been great on offense, but I think now you add the defense that we can run out there this year, special teams. I think we're a much more balanced football team in all 3 phases as far as our players and our coaching staff. And that's what has me excited.
Well, I remember you telling Daniel Hooker after that last game last year, It may be a good thing that we lost and didn't get into the playoffs because we were so banged up that we might have got him in the first round, and that would have been a shame. But talking a little bit about Coach Odom, can you give us a little more background on him? I mean, social media wise, he's a lot of fun to watch, but tell us a little bit more about Jerry.
Well, Jerry and I met each other. I was a senior at University of Florida, and he came in with the number one recruiting class in FBS football, Division I football that year. It was him and Emmett Smith. There was a lot of good players in that freshman class that we had there at University of Florida, which was my senior year. So I got a chance to play with him for 1 year. You know, Jerry was a guy who was just his dad was one of the greatest coaches, high school coaches in Florida history down in Merritt Island, coached for many years, won a lot of games. So Jerry's grown up around football. He wasn't a real big guy, but he played at the University of Florida, started there three years at least because he was such a great, smart football player and tough, made a lot of plays. And so he brings that just competitive fire that I think you had to have as a defensive coordinator. The other thing is, you know, I thought last year I started noticing that we sort of there was answers or questions that we were trying to answer maybe after the fact. We might go into the game after the game and say, oh, we should have done this or that. I felt like when Jerry was available, I knew he was going to bring that same ability that we have on offense, in that he's had that system in place for 20 years now, just like I have on offense. So we already know the answers before the questions are asked. So we can make those adjustments in a timely manner. And I wanted somebody on that side of the ball that could keep our guys at the level we were on offense and hold them accountable and teach them how to play the game the right way. And I think he's going to bring all that to Western Carolina.
That's great. Steve?
Bob, I'll tell you how old I am. I played against his dad, Gerald Odom, Coach Jerry Odom's dad.
Yeah.
And it was not a good experience. After, I think the first time he hit me, I was 5 yards in the backfield, going backwards. So that tells you about that. Coach, I just wanted to talk about this non-conference schedule. We've 4 consecutive non-conference games to open the season, 3 on the road. I think as tough a non-conference schedule as I can remember in decades here at Western. The pluses and minuses maybe of playing this type of competition before your conference schedule.
Yeah, a lot of people said, man, your schedule's so tough. I said, hey, let's embrace this. That's how I told our team. Let's embrace being able to go play some really good football teams because it's going to make us better. You know, and I love the way it's set up, you know, even though it is a tough schedule. Those first 4 games, I think, will tell us a lot about our football team. I think we're going to improve greatly in those first 4 games. You know, North Carolina State, Elon is a top 25 team. We got to go to Elon. Campbell's a new program that's got a lot of ability, a lot of players, good athletes on their team. And then, you know, going out to Montana in that environment and playing a good football team like Montana. But what I love about that schedule is to have those 4 teams. I think we'll know a lot about our football team. I think we'll improve a great deal that first 4 weeks. Then we get an open week, a bye week to get ourselves back and get ourselves healthy. And then we got a run of the SoCon. And I think at that time we'll be a really good football team and hopefully make a big run for the SoCon championship.
Well, I know I am going to be bringing my family to that Montana game. We're going to have 10 people out in Missoula. So very much looking forward to getting out and seeing us there. And sounds like we've sold the ticket allotment that we got.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people going out. It's crazy. I think we're going to have a lot of support out there. I heard it. The atmosphere is tremendous. And so it's going to be a great experience for our kids.
That's good. So we talked a little bit about the offensive coordinator. You know, the defensive coordinator. You know the offensive coordinator pretty well.
Yeah, Rylan Wells is Doug Dickey's grandson. Coach Dickey was a former Tennessee head coach, University of Tennessee. He was, University of Florida head coach. This is his grandson. I had recruited him back at Jacksonville University. Cade, my son, was the quarterback there. I recruited him as a backup there behind Cade. He was a year or 2 behind Cade. And then he wound up taking over and being a 2-year starter there after Cade graduated. So Rylan knows our system. He's been in it as a player, just like Cade was. And then the last 3 years, he's been our tight end coach here and done a tremendous job for us. He really helped Cade a lot with game plans and helping Cade put together the game plans the last 3 years. So I just felt like it was a natural. I thought about going back maybe and doing it myself. But I love the fact that I can turn it over to somebody like him who understands what I want, just like Cade. And he understands there's certain things I stand for that we're going to be good at on that side of the ball. And then just let him sort of have the creative, ability to go put together what he expects to get done, but understanding what our philosophy is. And he knows what I expect, what I need, and what I'm going to demand on this side of the ball. And so I have been pleasantly surprised, not surprised, but just satisfied with what he's done this offseason. He's never been a coordinator, so I didn't know how he would take on that role. But, man, he has been organized. He's been very proficient in everything that he does. He's motivated the players in a really great way. I love the way he motivates them. And so I think we've got a big-time coach on that side of the ball. And Kyle Dickey's a guy we brought in. He was a former quarterback, has already been a play caller for 2 or 3 years now on the college level. So we've got him sort of taking on Ryland's role from the last 3 years. So he's helping Ryland a lot, just like Ryland helped Cade. And I think with those two, we're going to put together another top 5 offense in the country. I think we have that ability.
Great. That's great.
Coach, you're talking about quarterbacks. Watching the last couple of scrimmages, of course, everybody knows about Cole Gonzalez, his credentials, the Player of the Year last year in the Southern Conference Offensive Player of the Year. But I tell you one thing, you've got some insurance policies now. You've got some depth. Watching Jefferson Boaz, the transfer from Carolina, 6'7", 240, and I was impressed the way he could throw the football. And then watching, Taryn Dickens was a heck of an athlete, but boy, I'm really impressed with him throwing the football. And then you got Bennett Judy. I mean, you've got 4 good-looking quarterbacks right there with some of them not much experience, but the talent level is tremendous as far as what I'm observing.
Well, we felt like in this offense, you got to have quarterbacks. You got to have guys that can play and go out and perform and be efficient. And we talk about being a Hall of Fame point guard because we want you to be able to distribute the ball at a very high efficiency rate to our great skill players that we're going to put you around and surround you with. Jefferson was a guy that, he had graduated 3.5 years from Carolina, had always been the third guy sort of there. They've had some great quarterbacks, through Carolina the last few years, but wanted to go play. And so I didn't know if we just will have a big chance at him. But this was one time I think our offense made a difference. Also being in Carolina, he wanted to stay in the state. He's from North Carolina. But he also had heard from other coaches, college coaches had told him, man, this is the system you want to play in. This is where you would fit. It's a great system. You'll put up big numbers. And he came here with, because I didn't think we'd have a chance because Cole, I had to be honest with him. I said, Cole's my guy right now. He's Player of the Year. He's coming back. You'll compete for the backup job, but you'll be one play away, and you never know what could happen. And so he took that as a challenge. And I told him we had 2 young guys we really like you say, the 2 redshirt freshmen we think are very talented. And so it's been sort of a big battle between all 3 of them for the backup job. But I really I'm glad we got Jefferson because he's added that experience, that we needed on that roster. But I feel really good and comfortable after going through now training camp with all 4 of those guys. And I think we've got a really good room. And we got 4 capable guys that can go out and perform in this offense.
So you've got some transfers that have come in, and I know there's pluses and minuses to the transfer portal. How do you, as coach and your staff, look at those pluses and minuses? Because the transfer portal has changed the game so much in the last couple of years.
Well, I think the portal has helped people in certain ways, right? I think some people, I think Sanford has really helped them because they have a great master's program, graduate school. And so they're able to attract, being a private school, and they've been able to attract some really good fifth-year guys, grad students. That's really helped, I think, their program. for us, it's been more, we felt like it's helped us. We found our niche was to keep recruiting high school kids, right? It's going to take a little bit longer, but that's who I am. I develop players. I love to develop players. I love to get them in our system and see them grow into great young men and really good football players. And so we sort of went that route. And if you think about it, just the natural thing tells you, hey, if all these schools, especially FBS schools, are getting 10 players from high school instead of 20, because the other 10 they're getting in the portal, now that leaves a lot of talented players out there that we have a chance to go and hopefully recruit. And I think we've done that the last 3 years. We've recruited some really high-end FCS, maybe FBS type players that got dropped. And it's taken a while because they're young and we're developing them. Now, though, instead of having freshmen and sophomores, we got juniors and seniors. We're starting to get that veteran leadership and getting those guys developed their bodies because they're older people, older players. But for us, that's sort of what we made our I think that's I think everywhere you go, you got to make sure you find out where your strengths and weaknesses are if you're going to develop a great program. And just because I did it one way at Valdosta State or Jacksonville don't mean you do it the same way here. You got to find your strengths and your niche. And I thought ours was going out and continue to recruit high school players and then complement the areas that we needed with some portal guys. And so what we've done, let's say we've got some linebackers we think are really good players at that Mike position, that middle linebacker position. But they're both freshmen and sophomores, like redshirt freshmen, sophomores. They're young. They hadn't played a lot of football. So we've brought in Wesley Scott, a guy who knows this system, who's made a lot of tackles in the system, been an all-conference player. He's a senior. So we needed to just complement that position with a veteran guy. And so we went out and got him in the portal. And so we've done that at 3 or 4 positions. D-tackle, we felt like we needed a couple of experienced guys to help with depth there while our young guys continue to grow. So we went out and got some guys there. So we've complemented with the portal. The portal's helped us complement certain areas that we needed some veteran leadership. And I think it's been good for us. We lost a couple of guys last year. My son took a couple when he went to Pittsburgh, and they were going to leave anyway. They were very talented kids. But I think the way you make people say, oh, the portals will ruin you. Well, what I try to do as a coach is just make sure I got guys ready to go behind them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Always have your depth chart where if that starter leaves, I got 2 or 3 more I can pick from. And the case shows you here, like we lost probably one of the best tailbacks in FCS, Desmond Reed, who went to Pittsburgh. CJ was one of the top receivers. He goes to Pitt. They both going to play, maybe start there.
Wow.
Talking to my son. Yet we did not go out and get another running back or receiver at those 2 positions. You know why? Because our room's loaded. We don't, and that's what I told our room. I don't need to go get nobody else. I believe in the guys we got in that room. We got some very good football players still left in that room, both of those rooms. And I think if we do that, continue to have that kind of depth, we can afford to lose one here and there and continue to be a good program.
That's great. It looks like you're using the portal strategically then.
Yeah. Yep.
Steve.
Coach, going back to I know the college landscape, football landscape's changed just dramatically since you played. And it's over the years, it's evolved. But in the last couple of years, it's just dramatic change. What would you be asking for now for the NIL if you were still playing?
I know it, man. I told somebody I wish that was the case back then. I might be retired by now. No, yeah, because I started as a freshman, so I probably could have made quite a bit of money after that freshman year. But no, I'm old school though. Steve, is that I just felt like to me, I loved the way it was when I played ball because it was all about getting your degree. Being a student athlete. Man, University of Florida gave me a chance to go play and compete. And then if I was good enough, which I was on that borderline of being good enough to go play then in the NFL and played 13 years professionally, then I had my opportunity to do that. But college football to me was all about tradition and just being a Gator. And I would never think about leaving there and playing for somebody else. And so I'm sort of old school and all that. But, as head coaches, even though we are old school, we have to we have to change the way we do things. We have to understand that no longer do you have a kid for 4 years, and he really don't go nowhere else. We have kids going 3 and 4 places in 4 years. So I think you have to make sure that you develop these kids and that they understand what we're doing and where we want to go as a program. And hopefully they buy into that and they accept that and they want to be a part of that. And I think we've done a good job with that. I think every man to a man on our roster, every one of them will tell you when you ask them what do they want to accomplish here. They said, man, I don't want to leave here until I win a Southern Conference championship. I want to be one of the first people to do that, and we've sort of built that up, how special that would be. And because of that, I don't think, we hadn't had many guys leave, and I think that's been good for our program.
And plus,
Wow.
Coach, you probably, had you left to take another deal at that time, you wouldn't have married the head majorette, the Florida Gators.
Well, I sort of had her tied up since kindergarten. So.
That's right.
That's great.
Somebody said, well, we knew each other since kindergarten. It was a little, small school. We had 49 people in our class, Steve. So I tell people all the time, I look at her, I said, I didn't have a lot to pick from. So we only had 49 people. Well, she looked at me and said, well, I didn't have a lot to pick from neither. I said, you're right.
Well, that's great. Coach, we really enjoyed the time today. This has been great. We appreciate you coming on and joining us. Tracking the Cats is about all things Catamounts, and we'll have another episode coming up soon. But in the meantime, it's been a great day. We're looking forward to this season. Excited to see how you guys do out on the field, and looking forward to be able to maybe talking to you later in the season or in the postseason.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's get a postseason deal for sure. We, I tell you what, I hope this football team we can stay healthy. It was one of the most disappointing. Steve had asked about sort of where we were at in our third, now fourth year. I felt like, man, last year was starting to look when we were 5-1, right? We lost Arkansas, but won a couple of really tough games there where we won in the last seconds. I thought, man, if we could stay healthy. I felt like that team was sort of on that same path as us going and winning a national championship in our third year, same time zone. Third year at Valdosta State, we went 14-0, won the national championship. I started to see, our quarterback was starting to play good. We had really good players around. Defensively, we weren't quite where we wanted to be, but man, I thought we were starting to trend in that direction. And man, I never try to make excuses. I'm just telling you what I felt is that I thought we were on that track that we could have done something special last year. And I was so disappointed because we were down to 8 of our top 11 offensive linemen are hurt. Third string quarterback in that last game, third string tailback. At the end of the season, I was so upset that these players didn't get what we really deserved out of that season. If we could have just stayed relatively healthy, man, I thought we could have made a little run in the playoffs and done some special things. But hey, that's sort of some experience that we can draw from. That's some of the things that you have to go through to build a program and to build it the right way. Like Michael Jordan didn't just win a championship. He went through a lot of tough losses to Detroit Pistons before he became a champion. I think you had to experience. I think you had to grow as a team and develop as a team going through those kind of experiences. And I think that's going to help us this year. And I just want us to stay healthy. I think if we do, then, we'll be there at the end of the year with a chance, I think, to make a run.
Well, I know I'll look forward to seeing you in Missoula and seeing the Catamounts throughout the season. And we've really enjoyed this version of Tracking the Cats. Brought to you, as always, by Stanberry Insurance on Main Street in Silva for all your insurance needs. Thanks again, Coach. Thanks, Steve. It's been a great half hour.
All right. Thanks a lot.